He saved my family from poverty, and I destroyed him with my secret. They say guilt eats you alive, but mine didn't just eat me. It raised my children, slept beside me, and called me my queen. He was the man who healed my father, funded my mother's dreams, and pulled my family out of poverty. Then he married me, and I repaid him with the one sin he didn't deserve. I gave him 3 children that weren't his. Hold on. Just hear me out. Hear my side before you judge me. Welcome to Raw Reddit Tales. Subscribe to keep getting the spiciest stories online. We were the family people pitied in our small Ohio town, the kind neighbors looked at but never helped, the kind everyone whispered about at church. Our house sat right on the edge of a dying neighborhood, a place where the American dream came to rot. Rusted roof, broken porch, an old plastic chair outside that creaked whenever my mom sat down to rest after another 12-hour day selling corn dogs and funnel cakes outside the Speedway gas station. My dad used to be strong, a truck driver who loved the open road. But after his second stroke, he could barely move his left arm. Watching him try to lift a spoon was like watching a man drown in slow motion. And me? I was just Gina, the pretty-for-nothing girl. People used to say it like it was a joke, but it stuck. I worked part-time at a diner and came home smelling like burnt coffee and grease. Then came him, Evans. He didn't just show up, he arrived like light through a crack. Tall, calm, the kind of man who looked like money but spoke like peace. One morning, he stopped by my mom's stand, bought every snack she had, and sat there, under that blazing sun, eating and listening to her talk about my dad. He didn't rush her. He didn't pity her. He just cared. Within a month, Evans had found specialists for my father in Columbus, paid every medical bill in full, helped my mom rent a small food truck so she could finally stop frying outside in the cold. He said, "No family should suffer alone." We thought God sent him, but one night, while Dad thanked him through tears, Evans turned to my parents and said softly, "I don't want gratitude. I want Gina. I want to protect her, be her friend, her husband." My mom gasped. My dad grabbed his hand like he'd found a miracle, and I stood there smiling for them, dying inside, because I was already in love with someone else. I wish I could tell you I ran, that I told my parents I was in love with someone else, someone who made my pulse race and my body ache. But when you grow up poor, love becomes a luxury you can't afford. So I stayed quiet. Evans wasn't just any man. He was a dream dressed in kindness. He drove a black Audi, wore expensive cologne, and spoke like he'd never known pain. Everyone in town adored him, especially my parents. My mom said he was God's second chance. My dad called him the son I never had. But me? I called him the reason I couldn't breathe. Because every good thing he did for my family came with invisible chains around my heart. I tried to tell myself I'd learned to love him, that maybe marriage wasn't supposed to be about butterflies or stolen kisses, maybe it was about survival. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw Ryan. Ryan was everything Evans wasn't. A mechanic. Rough hands, loud laugh, no savings, no future. But when he touched me, I forgot the world was cruel. He didn't promise me the moon, he gave me fire. He lived in a small apartment above the auto shop downtown, smelled like gasoline and sin, and made me feel like the center of his universe. When Evans proposed, I told Ryan I couldn't do it, that my parents needed this. He stared at me with those wild blue eyes and said, "So you'll sell yourself for their comfort?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. The night before my wedding, I met Ryan behind the diner. Rain soaked us to the bone, and we kissed like it was the last time we'd ever breathe. I told him I'd always love him, even if I belonged to someone else. He held me and whispered, "You don't have to belong to him, Gina. You already belong to me." The next morning, I put on the white dress Evans bought. Satin, perfect, suffocating. My mom cried through the vows. My dad clapped through his tears. And Evans? He smiled like he just won his life's purpose. But inside, I was screaming. I didn't marry him out of love. I married him out of guilt, and that was the beginning of my sin. Our first year of marriage looked perfect from the outside. We had the kind of life my mother used to pray for. A nice 2-story house in the suburbs of Columbus, a new car in the driveway, and a man who treated me like fragile glass. Evans was the definition of good. He'd wake up early to make breakfast, kiss my forehead before work, and text me midday just to ask if I'd eaten. People online called us goals. But every night, when he reached for me, I flinched. Not because he was rough. No, because he was too gentle. He made love like it was a prayer, quiet and careful. I wanted thunder, not tenderness. I wanted to lose control, not feel protected. And every time he said, "I love you," guilt crawled up my throat like poison. Ryan never stopped calling. At first, I ignored him. I told myself I was a married woman now, Mrs. Gina Evans, and that should mean something. But temptation has a memory, and one afternoon it came knocking. Literally. Ryan was standing on my porch, sweat on his temples, smelling of engine oil and heartbreak. "I just wanted to see you," he said. I should have slammed the door. Instead, I let him in. We talked for hours, about the past, about how small towns remember everything, about how I'd traded love for safety. When he touched my hand, I didn't pull away. I told him I missed him, and he said, "Then stop pretending." That's how it began. Again. At first, it was stolen moments. A motel off I-70, his apartment above the garage. Lies that rolled off my tongue, smoother each time. Evans would text, "Coming home early tonight," and I'd panic, not because I feared getting caught, but because I didn't want to stop. Then one night, Ryan told me he couldn't stand sneaking around. He wanted more. He wanted us. I laughed bitterly and said, "We live in different worlds." He said, "So what? The same sky covers both." And that line broke me. By the end of that week, I rented a small place 8 minutes away, said it was for a cousin who'd lost her job. Evans smiled and said, "You have the kindest heart, Gina." He didn't know he was funding his own betrayal. It started as a game, a dangerous, thrilling, stupid game that made my heart race like I was alive again. During the day, I played the role of a perfect wife, quiet, grateful, gentle. At night, I became something else entirely. Evans would say, "I'm coming home early, wear that red dress I love." I'd smile, kiss him goodbye in the morning, and by sunset, I'd be in that rented apartment 8 minutes away, with Ryan. He was my chaos, my undoing, my addiction. He didn't need words to know what I wanted. The way he'd pull me close, grip my waist, and whisper my name, it was like he was pulling the truth out of me. I told myself it was just physical, that I'd never leave Evans, that this was just a secret I could bury deep. But secrets have roots, and mine were spreading fast. Soon, I stopped feeling guilty. I started planning. I'd crush 2 mild sedatives into Evans's wine whenever I wanted to sneak out after our nights. Nothing that would hurt him, just enough to make him sleep through my sins. I'd wait until his breathing softened, then I'd slip out the back door, heart pounding, heels in my hand. Every touch with Ryan felt like rebellion. Every kiss a crime. When I returned home before sunrise, I'd crawl into bed beside Evans. He'd stir, smile, and whisper, "You're my peace, Gina. Peace." If only he knew. One night, while lying beside him, I caught myself staring at his face. At the faint lines around his eyes, the gentle way he breathed. He was a good man. A pure man. And for a second, I hated myself. I thought about confessing everything, about running away and sparing him the heartbreak that was bound to come. But Ryan texted that same night, "You're mine, G. Don't forget that." And just like that, guilt drowned beneath desire. Weeks turned into months. Months turned into a year. I'd become an expert liar. Evans kept saying he couldn't wait for us to start a family, that he was ready to be a dad. I smiled through dinner, knowing I was already late. Late and terrified, because I knew exactly whose child I was carrying. When the pregnancy test turned positive, I sat on the bathroom floor for almost an hour, staring at those 2 pink lines like they were my death sentence. Evans had been praying for this moment. He wanted a family more than anything. Me? I was praying for it not to happen, because I knew that baby wasn't his. I told Ryan first. He froze, rubbed his jaw, and said, "So what? We'll figure it out." But we didn't exist outside motel rooms and cheap lies. I couldn't tell Evans the truth. He'd done too much for me, for my parents, for my life. He didn't deserve this kind of pain. So I lied. Evans cried when I told him. He dropped to his knees and kissed my stomach, whispering, "Thank you, God." That night, he held me so close I could barely breathe. He told everyone the next day. My mom screamed with joy. My dad hugged him like he'd just healed all our broken years. And me? I smiled and clutched my belly, already hating myself. When our son was born, people said, "He looks just like his father." I laughed through my tears, because he did, just not the father they meant. Ryan's blue eyes, his nose, his dimples. Evans never noticed. He'd hold the baby against his chest, humming softly, saying, "My boy, my blessing." Months passed. I thought maybe I dodged a bullet. But Ryan didn't disappear. He showed up at the park one day while I was walking the stroller, leaned close, and whispered, "He looks like me." I begged him to stay away, to let me live this lie. He just smirked. "You think you can erase me, Gina? You can't." Then somehow, I did it again. Another pregnancy, another child, another lie. Evans was over the moon, called it fate. He'd tell everyone, "God really loves me." I'd nod, smile, and die a little more inside each time. When our third came along, I didn't even try to justify it anymore. I was in too deep. I couldn't stop. Evans never raised his voice, never questioned, never doubted me. He worked overtime, changed diapers, cooked, cleaned. He was the kind of husband women prayed for. And I was the kind of wife men feared. Years passed, and if guilt had a heartbeat, it would have been mine. Every time Evans kissed our kids goodnight, every time he tucked them in and whispered, "Daddy loves you," I felt my chest tighten. He adored those children, Ryan's children. He never suspected a thing. He'd post family pictures on Facebook with captions like, "My world in one frame." People envied us. Perfect couple, perfect family. But what they didn't know was that perfection was built on a foundation of lies. Ryan eventually moved to another city, Detroit, after he got a steady job at an auto plant. Before he left, he came to see me one last time. "Come with me," he said. "Let's stop lying." I looked at him and realized that as much as I once loved him, I couldn't. Not anymore. My whole life was built around Evans now, around the man I destroyed. When Ryan drove away, I cried harder than I did on my wedding day. That night, Evans found me in the kitchen, tears streaming down my face. He held me, kissed my forehead, and whispered, "You've carried too much pain for too long, Gina. But you don't have to anymore. I'll carry it for you." That line shattered me, because he already was, without knowing it. By the time our third child turned 5, Evans had paid off the house, started his own small construction company, and gave my parents a monthly allowance. He was their hero, their answered prayer. And then life struck again. It was a Saturday afternoon. Our second son, Liam, was playing in the backyard. One minute he was laughing, the next he collapsed. Eyes rolled back, body shaking. I screamed. Evans rushed over, scooped him up, yelling for the car keys. My hands trembled so bad I couldn't move. At the hospital, everything happened in flashes. Doctors shouting, nurses rushing, machines beeping. I stood in the corner, numb, praying and panicking at the same time. Evans kept saying, "It's okay, baby. I'll give my blood if I have to." And that's when the world tilted. Because I knew, deep down, his blood couldn't match. It wasn't possible. Yet Evans walked in with confidence, rolled up his sleeve and said, "Take mine." I froze. My knees went weak. Because when the doctor came back out, he smiled and said, "Perfect match." I stood there, numb. My ears rang like the world had stopped spinning. "A match?" I whispered. The doctor nodded with that same calm smile. "Perfect match. You married well, Mrs. Evans." My legs almost gave out. Evans just exhaled in relief, tears brimming in his eyes. He kissed my forehead and whispered, "See, baby? Everything's gonna be okay." Then he walked back into the room, holding our son's hand like nothing had happened. But inside me, chaos, fear, confusion. None of it made sense. When we got home, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying it. How could his blood match? Was it a mistake? Did the doctor mix something up? My heart raced as I stared at him, lying peacefully beside me, the man I'd betrayed beyond redemption. Days later, I finally confronted him. My voice was shaking. "Evans, the blood test? How? How did it match?" He didn't look surprised. Didn't even flinch. He just sighed and said quietly, "Because I already knew Gina." My throat went dry. "Knew? What?" He turned to face me, eyes softer than I'd ever seen. I knew those kids weren't mine. My heart stopped. He went on, tears glistening. "I knew since the first one was born. The eyes, the timing, the way you looked at him. I saw it. I'm not a fool, Gina. I just didn't want to lose you. Or them." He sat up, running a hand through his hair. "You think I helped your parents, married you, built all this because I didn't know? I did it because I loved you. Because no matter what you did, I couldn't stop seeing the woman who once looked at me like I was her miracle." I couldn't speak. My body went cold. Then he said the one thing I'll never forget. "They may not have my blood, but they have my heart. That's enough for me." He walked out of the room that night, not angry, not broken, just done. It's been 2 years. He never came back. I see him sometimes at church, sitting 3 rows ahead, with a new woman and peace written all over his face. I wonder if forgiveness feels like that, if love can ever survive after being poisoned by lies. What do you think? Was he too forgiving, or was I just too far gone? The end. Please like and subscribe for more interesting stories like this.